Wyoming PBS presents the 2018 gubernatorial debate at Sheridan College. Democratic and Republican candidates face off live from the Whitney Center for the Arts. This debate is sponsored by the Sheridan Press.
Good evening and welcome to tonight's gubernatorial debate sponsored by the Sheridan Press and hosted by Sheridan College at the Whitney Center for the Arts. My name is Kristen Saban and I'm the publisher of the Sheridan Press. I'm joined by Craig Blumenshine of Wyoming PBS, who will help ask tonight's questions, and Dixie Johnson, CEO of the Sheridan County Chamber of Commerce, who will help ensure we stay within our 2-hour time frame tonight. All of the candidates who have filed with the Secretary of State's office for the August primary election were invited to tonight's debate. Thank you to the 8 candidates and all of those in the audience who were able to join us. The order of the candidates' appearance on stage from the left was chosen randomly once all had RSVP'd to the debate. In the interest of time, we asked each candidate to submit the text of a 30-second introduction, which Craig and I will read now.
Kristen, thank you very much, and thank you to the Sheridan Press for hosting us this evening and to Sheridan College. Taylor Haynes is a Republican. Dr. Haynes is a constitutionalist with a vision of eliminating federal overreach as governor. He owns and operates a cattle ranch in Albany County and also owns a health benefits company with locations in Worland, Laramie, and Salt Lake City. He is an active leader in Wyoming and has served on state and national boards in the agricultural, education, and financial sectors, including 12 years on the Board of Trustees at the University of Wyoming. He is nationally recognized for his contributions to Western culture and tradition and has been inducted into the National Multicultural Heritage Hall of Fame in Fort Worth, Texas. Dr. Haynes was a delegate to the 2016 Republican National Convention, where Donald Trump was nominated, and he continues to be a supporter of President Trump. Dr. Haynes currently serves as the Republican Party Precinct Chair in District 45-2 in Albany County.
Next, we have Republican... Next, we have Republican Mark Gordon. Mark Gordon is a rancher, small businessman, and currently serves as Wyoming's state treasurer. He grew up on a family ranch in Johnson County, and together with his wife Jenny, continues to ranch outside Buffalo. Mark has worked in the energy, tourism, and agriculture industries. He has served on the board of the Federal Reserve Bank of Kansas City until 2012, when he was appointed by Governor Matt Mead to serve as treasurer. Wyoming voters elected Mark to the position in 2014. As treasurer, Mark has led a transformation of the office, resulting in improved returns on state investments, better protection of state savings, and increased transparency and access to state financial data for the general public. Under Mark's leadership, state investment funds have grown by $5 billion.
Foster Friess is a Republican. Foster grew up herding cattle on the family ranch before becoming a captain in the United States Army. Taking $800 in leave pay, Foster built a $15 billion American success story, working with Fortune 500 companies across America to create jobs and grow businesses. Recognized by Forbes in 2018 as one of the top 10 investors of this generation, Foster Friess has called Wyoming home for over a quarter century and is running for governor to promote values of freedom, prosperity, and kindness, and to use experience to diversify the economy, improve education, and stabilize our budget.
Next, we have Democrat Mary Throne. Mary was born and raised in Campbell County, growing up on a ranch on Wild Horse Creek. After college, she spent 2 years volunteering in Thailand, returned to the U.S. for law school, and then came back to Wyoming as soon as she was able. With her husband, Kevin Boyce, she started her family in Cheyenne. Mary cares about her community and became active in the Presbyterian Church, Rocky Mountain Mineral Law Foundation, Rotary, and volunteering at her son's schools. She's a graduate of Leadership Wyoming and a member of the Wyoming Business Alliance Steering Committee. In 2006, tired of politics as usual, she stepped up and ran for the Wyoming legislature. As a legislator, Mary worked across the aisle to build consensus in tackling the biggest problems our state faces. She's an expert in natural resource issues, which she has brought to bear in forging common sense solutions to growth and diversification in our state. Mary knows Wyoming can be more than a boom and bust state.
Rex Wild is a Democrat. Cheyenne resident Rex Wild is a military veteran and proponent of the Second Amendment. He has 3 priorities in his campaign: promote Wyoming as a tourist destination, emphasize water development issues, and the legalization of recreational and medical marijuana.
Next, we have Republican Bill Dolan. Bill Dolan was born and raised in Sheridan, the only candidate with that distinction. As a young man, he left the state to pursue opportunities. Along the way, he acquired specific education in transportation, industrial marketing, engineering, and sales. He returned to Sheridan in 2000, having been in corporate management and later founding, owning, and starting successful businesses from scratch. He is a businessman, the only candidate who sells coal as part of his business portfolio. He feels he can add value through critical, fiscal, creative, and strong leadership. The energy to accomplish this will come from Wyoming's greatest resource, you.
Sam Galiotos is a Republican. Sam is a Wyoming native, born and raised in Cheyenne. The Galiotos family's roots run deep in Wyoming, having been in the state since the early 1900s. Professionally, Sam has spent his adult life running multi-billion-dollar businesses in the global travel technology industry. He is running for governor because he believes it is a crucial time for our state. Sam has led people and organizations in the pursuit of solving large, complex problems. These skills are vital to leading Wyoming through our challenging times, creating a prosperous future for ourselves and for our children.
Next, we have Republican Harriet Hageman. Harriet Hageman is a water and natural resources attorney out of Cheyenne. She grew up on a ranch near Fort Laramie, Wyoming, and comes from a long line of ranchers, teachers, and small business owners. She went to Casper College for 2 years on a livestock judging scholarship, and then to UW, where she received both her business degree and law degree. She spent the last 20 years fighting to protect property rights, water rights, and civil rights. She is a nationally recognized expert on federal regulatory overreach, and she is a strong advocate for protecting all of Wyoming's businesses and industries. Now, as I stated earlier, Dixie Johnson from the Sheridan County Chamber of Commerce will help keep us and the candidates within the timeframes allotted tonight.
Now, a short explanation of tonight's format. Each candidate will have one question directed to him or her specifically. That candidate will have 90 seconds to answer. Each of the other candidates will then have 60 seconds to respond. Finally, the candidate of whom the question was originally asked will have a chance for a 30-second rebuttal. After the 8 questions, we'll wrap up with a 2-minute closing statement from each candidate. Tonight's debate is being live streamed by Wyoming PBS. We ask the audience to be respectful of the candidates, your neighbors, and all of our time. Please take a moment to ensure your mobile devices are turned off or silenced, and please hold your applause until the end of the evening.
The majority of the questions candidates will answer tonight have been submitted by our readers over the last couple weeks. Craig and I sorted through them and chose the 8 we felt best fit this debate's format. The candidates did not have access to the questions prior to this evening's event.
Let's get started. The first question will be directed to Dr. Haynes. You will have 90 seconds to respond. Craig?
Dr. Haynes, this question is on Wyoming's aging population and potential workforce shortage. U.S. Census Bureau statistics show the number of people aged 65 and older in the state grew between July 2016 and July 2017, and the median age of state residents rose the fastest in the country to 37.7 years. Economists say that if that trend doesn't change, Wyoming could face a serious labor force shortage. What does Wyoming need to change in order to retain and recruit younger workers to the state? Why should millennials, who generally want to live in urban centers, choose to live in Wyoming?
Thank you for that question. First of all, the first thing you do is you build from your strength, and our strength is our young people. So what we need to do is completely restructure education so that we can keep our young people here. We have to develop a diversified workforce, and the way you do that is this. By the time a student finishes his or her sophomore year in high school, they should have the basic prep done. Then they can choose from a serious university track or a serious vocational track, from all of the traditional trades to information technology, from how do you build a computer, how do you network, what's satellite, what is artificial intelligence, and how do we do that? By keeping our young people here, that's the first way we plug this drain of workers. The next thing we do when we have this diversified workforce, we cut taxes, we reduce regulations to the point they're only public health and safety. That will allow the entrepreneurs to diversify our economy, and that will bring workers and jobs to Wyoming. Thank you.
Treasurer Gordon, 60 seconds.
Well, thank you. You know, I think about speaking here last year at a commencement address, which was full of people who were younger and middle-aged, who were anxious to get to work in this state and looking for great opportunities. And if you look around in various places here, Sheridan's growing, we have access to the mountains, we have a beautiful state. We need to build the support structures and the economic opportunities that will allow people to go forth and thrive and build on entrepreneurialism, just as I did in the 1980s. I think this is a state that will grow, has great opportunities to grow, and I think our education system needs to be able to support that. And Sheridan College is a great place that's already done that.
Mr. Freeze, your 60-second response.
Well, there's a correction I have to make. I'm not Mr. Freeze. That's my dad's name. I'm known as Foster. Now, the trick is, how do we make it exciting for young people to stay here? I've met a person who works in Cheyenne, and she travels over to cross the border because she likes the gymnasium. So it's going to take a little entrepreneurial spirit of the people in each of the local communities. They have to decide how they want to make it exciting for the young people to be here and to enjoy the area. We are all kind of not millennials here. And so I confess that I'm sometimes technology challenged, and my team has to kind of graduate me how to use these various technologies, and then they give me a certificate. And just last week on my wall, I have posted the certificate. I have conquered the Keurig coffee machine. Now, it's also very, very important that we think about the nature of the young people who want to stay here and make it a pleasant environment for them to be here.
Ms. Throne, 60 seconds.
Thank you, and thank you to everyone for being here tonight. This is a question we're asked frequently, and in all of my travels across the state, I have met so many young professionals and young leaders who want to stay in Wyoming, but just met a woman from Casper who is now living in Fort Collins because she's an architectural engineer and there were no jobs for her in Wyoming. There are probably more graduates of the University of Wyoming in the Front Range than there are in Wyoming. So what do they want? They want amenities, they want nice places to live, and they want a quality K-12 education system so that when they start families, that they will know that their children will have the same opportunities that I had growing up in Wyoming. And they need jobs. And they don't just need jobs for one person in the couple. We need to be able to attract 2 career couples to Wyoming. I've heard from businesses that they'll offer a job to a spouse, but then the other spouse won't want to come. We have to fix that.
Mr. Wild, 60-second response.
Thank you very much for having me here tonight. And first and foremost, I want to thank all of our veterans here. Thank you for your service. I'm the only person here that has a clear-cut solution to the boom-bust cycles that Wyoming endures. And you might not like it, but it's marijuana. The reason I'm running for governor is for water, and we need revenue. All we have to do is look at these other states and see the revenue that they have brought in, and that's it. That's jobs. We need jobs. This will create jobs, and you know, it's we're going to find out how many people feel the same way I do tonight.
Mr. Dolan, 60-second response.
I'd like to give thanks to Jesus, my Savior, my wife for being here, and all of you here tonight. Quickly, we've lost 8,500 people in the last year and a half looking for opportunities they could not find here. If any of these people have jobs, they didn't want them. They left the state, and that's what I did as a young man, so I understand the economics. When it comes to marijuana, Oregon has too much of it, and the prices are going down, by the way, and they're starting to grow industrial hemp in place of the marijuana. And so
we should grow hemp too, because we have some of the best farmers in the world.
You're not supposed to interrupt. So anyway, the thing about it is industrial hemp is a new thought, new process, brings hundreds of jobs and millions in revenue. And I'm not opposed to medical marijuana either. So just to let you know, we need to start thinking differently. I'm the only guy that sells coal on this panel. I understand the coal sector, and it's going to be flat for a while. So we need to think differently, and we can do anything working together. All of us working together, we can accomplish anything, not just one of us.
Mr. Galiotos, 60 seconds.
Thank you for everybody to be here tonight. I just read a study where they studied high schoolers that graduated in the year 2000, and by 2010, only 40% of them were still here in Wyoming. We need to grow our private sector. We need to create jobs, and the private sector needs to create those jobs for us. We need to create an environment where the business community can guide the economy of Wyoming. Right now, many of our kids are not interested in working in energy or ag or travel and tourism. We need job diversity, and we need to create these jobs through the private sector. That's the only way that we're going to be able to grow economically. Last year, 5,500 kids graduated from our high schools in Wyoming. The majority of them are going to leave the state. Our future rests with our young people and keeping them here in Wyoming, and the only way to do that is to create job diversity. Thank you.
Ms. Hageman, 60 seconds.
Thank you. If you look at my brochure out in the foyer, open it up, you will see that I come from a very large family. I think there are 40-some of us in my immediate family, and the vast majority of us live in Wyoming. In fact, I only have one niece who's left the state. We are small business owners, we are teachers, we are entrepreneurs, we are exactly what you're talking about. And we've been able to find jobs here, and we've been able to operate our businesses here because we want to. We love Wyoming. I think I'm a bit more optimistic than some of the other folks up here on the stage, because I truly see that we have a wonderful future in Wyoming. We have the amenities, we have the schools, we have the education system. The fact is that the key is the free market system. The state of Wyoming competes with our small business owners and our small entrepreneurs. We need to make sure that we've got a government that is the appropriate size, and that we're allowing the free market system to work and letting our small business owners take over from there. So I think that really one of the keys is just to make sure that the government provides a pathway rather than a roadblock. We make sure we get government out of the way, and Wyoming will thrive.
Dr. Haynes, 30-second rebuttal.
Well, it's clear that jobs, 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 that's a mantra, and that's right. Note that if you diversify the economy, we tend to think that means different kinds of things and different kinds of jobs. We do have a diversified economy because ag, tourism, and energy all need value added. They all need accountants, people need doctors, and a bunch of other professions. If we do more value added, whether it's in ag or whether it's in energy, if we build power plants, we do those things, there will be more jobs rather than just, say, working purely in the natural resource industry. But you have to play to your strength.
The next question will be directed to Treasurer Gordon. Kristen?
Employees at the Northern Wyoming Mental Health Center recently told members of the Joint Labor, Health, and Social Services Committee that there is a shortage of mental health care providers nationwide, and that trend is especially pronounced in Wyoming's smaller rural communities. How will your administration support rural health care employees in Wyoming and ensure that Wyomingites have access to quality, affordable health care?
Well, thank you, Kristen. That's an organization I used to serve on the board of, and it serves Sheridan and Johnson County and also Crook and Weston. And I'm familiar with the fact that in Crook and Weston at this point, a lot of that is handled by Skype, and it's a difficult challenge to try to talk to a computer when it's nice to have a warm body and a person that you can talk to. These are priorities that the state of Wyoming is going to have to and has had to make choices about. You know, as a governor, I would want to make sure that we would focus on community mental health care. We know that's a cheaper solution, and we need to be able to support that. To be able to educate those people is another question, and we can begin to sort of expand our educational mission. So I think this is a very important topic for Wyoming, and it's certainly one I support at the community level. I just want to take a moment and just pivot a little bit to that topic about whether we're losing all our kids to economic. I don't want to take us off task, but you know, I have kids and I've helped grow businesses and get people started. And it's a really fascinating time when you think about our aging population. What a tremendous opportunity in the healthcare services to be entrepreneurial and meet the needs of an aging population. This is a great laboratory for that. Thank you.
Mr. Freese.
Foster. One of the greatest solutions we have to deal with some of the mental health issues, it's a kind of fuzzy line between mental health and spiritual health. There's a program called Rachel's Challenge, which has been through Wyoming before. It was founded by the father of Rachel Scott, the first victim of Columbine. He took her message of creating a sense of connectedness among the people. We tell our kids, don't bully, don't use drugs. This tells them what they can do. They can create a chain reaction of kindness and impact the life of someone else in a very positive way. Rachel's Challenge has averted 7 school shootings, and they've avoided 500 suicides in the last 3 weeks. RachelChallenge.org. Look it up tonight. And this will do a huge, huge thing to change the attitude in the school. We say, oh, okay, I tolerate you, you tolerate me. No, we have to change the language to this. I accept you and you accept me. And that's the message of Rachel's Challenge. And the mental health issues, the suicides, the bullying, they can be solved by a very private-oriented Rachel's Challenge, and I hope you'll all look it up.
Ms. Throne.
Thank you. There's a very obvious answer that the leaders in Cheyenne have ignored for about 4 or 5 years now that would help our mental health centers as well as healthcare providers across the country, and that's Medicaid expansion. Our government leaders have adamantly refused to expand Medicaid, those in the legislature. That would have brought roughly $500 million into the state of money. Our federal money coming home was supported by the county commissioners, the Wyoming Business Alliance, all the rural hospitals, chambers of commerce. And with that kind of coalition, why didn't it happen? Purely politics, purely politics. Even my Republican brother, Tom, who's in the audience tonight, said, Mary, why aren't you guys doing Medicaid expansion? It's a no-brainer. Classic no-brainer. Would pump money into our mental health system, would provide more income for our community mental health centers, which need to be strengthened. And we also need to take more advantage of telehealth. Thank you.
Mr. Wild.
Why don't we have the same coverage, all of us here, that those people up on the Hill have? Why don't we have the same? Medicaid does need to be expanded. You're absolutely right on that, Mary. Here's the other thing. Medical marijuana will help people. Dr. Sanjay Gupta talked about it one night on CNN for an hour, about all the wonderful benefits about seizures, the oils, everything else. I mean, he just talked for an hour, and the FDA is on board fast-tracking everything. The other thing is, too, former Speaker of the House, John Boehner, said that we should legalize marijuana for our veterans. I don't know if you people know this or not, but we've lost more Iraqi and Afghanistan veterans to suicide than in combat. It needs to be legalized. It will make things easier for everybody, and will make things easier for the physicians here in Wyoming.
Mr. Dahlin.
We need health care competition across state lines to help with the cost of regular health care insurance. We need to look at new ways of how we conduct our health care via the internet and different ways we can provide rural care. And I don't disagree that we need to look at things from a health perspective. We get the worst suicide rate of any state. We need to focus on mental health issues within the state. And then one more thing to add to my colleague on the right, he does have a point about medical marijuana. It does offer some benefits. I have a sister-in-law that was in chemo treatment in Montana, and it was attributed with saving her life and her attitude both. So it's got some good things going on for it, and I wouldn't be opposed to it.
Mr. Galiotos.
Thank you. Well, I think the first thing that we need to do is we need to recognize both in the health and care insurance side of the equation and the service delivery side that Washington is not going to solve Wyoming's problems. We need to recognize that right up front. I see a huge opportunity right now to leapfrog, a leapfrog moment for Wyoming. We are rural and we have a low population base. And that sometimes is viewed as a negative. I see it as a huge opportunity for the state of Wyoming to take the lead in innovating new solutions to healthcare delivery through the use of technology, telediagnostic services, telemedicine. All of these things are on the forefront right now, and we are the perfect laboratory in Wyoming to take advantage of that, to create the solutions here, to solve problems for our own people in a rural environment, and to create jobs at the same time.
Ms. Hageman.
Our situation in terms of a rural health shortage and our mental health shortage in the state of Wyoming is not because there's been too little government. It's because there's been too much government. We need to get government out of the way. Not only should we not go forward with Medicaid expansion, all we have to do is look at those states that have, and we'll find that it's been astronomically more expensive than they ever projected. But we need to seek a waiver from the Obamacare requirements. We need regulatory reform at both the state and federal level. We need to get government out of the way. And the fact is that we need to be, I agree that mental health issues are of great concern to Wyoming, and as I've traveled the state, there are so many people who have approached me about this. We need to be addressing our suicide rate. We need to be working with people and putting together a task force of the greatest minds in the state of Wyoming to sit down and spend days, if that's what's necessary, coming up with real solutions to work in Wyoming, in our rural communities. But it's not going to come just from government. It has to come from getting government out of the way.
Dr. Haynes.
Thank you. Clearly, our suicide rate is embarrassing, and it's because we've stepped away from mental health except to pay lip service to it. We have some infrastructure in place. Each county, at least, should have a facility where we can take people when they become a danger to themselves or others. Right now, in many communities, they're put in jail. So you're confused, depressed, etc., and we put you in jail. How does that help you? That contributes to your tendency to commit suicide. We have the University of Wyoming Family Practice Centers. We should add a mental health component. We have the University of Wyoming Med School. We should add a psychiatric and psychological component to that, which we have to some degree, but we need to beef those up. So we've got the infrastructure in place. We need to build on that. And we need to have in at least each county a place where we can take people to get treatment, not to jail when they become a danger to themselves or others.
Treasurer Gordon, 30-second rebuttal.
Well, thanks. And Taylor, I think that was a good suggestion. You know, Volunteers of America, which is located right here, has a component that talks about spirituality. It's from the charity side. There's a facility there in Riverton as well that meets that need. So there are these efforts that are underway to try to be able to address this particular issue, from veterans to people recovering from alcoholism and drug abuse. These are all great efforts, and we need to support them. So thank you.
The next question will be directed to Mr. Freese. Craig?
With all due respect, Mr. Freese, this question has to do with diversity and inclusion. The movie 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri was nominated for Best Picture this year. In the movie, a bigoted cop bullies a young man, telling him he should move to Cuba because they, and I quote, kill gays down there. The young man replied, "No, you're thinking of Wyoming." My question is, can Wyoming, the equality state, succeed in diversifying its economy where there are lingering questions about how inclusive the state is? And a second part of that question, would you support on a statewide level, as Teton County's Republican Party has, Jackson's non-discrimination ordinance, which prohibits discrimination based on sexual orientation or gender identity?
If you look at Wyoming, how can you find a kinder, more inclusive group of people? We brought women vote before the territory was formed. And so we have to be very careful about creating special classes. We're all in this together. Do we all? I'm sorry, what? Oh, I thought someone interrupted me. So I'm much in favor of the whole idea of the approach of trying to accept one another in a spirit of kindness. And you mentioned this idea about Wyoming noted for killing gays. That was one incident. And now you have Lexington, Virginia being ostracized because some goofy person running a Red Hen restaurant asked Sarah Sanders, one of the most loving people in the country, to leave. Lexington is in a furor because here's this one person has damaged the whole town of Lexington. And we cannot let this incident happen how many years ago damage the reputation of Wyoming. We have to go out and sell Wyoming for who we are. And we have to transport that message to the rest of the people. We are kind, we're loving, and let's move that to the rest of the country and not allow this venom that pours out of the kingdom of the sea poison us. So I basically think we do not want to have a whole bunch of different laws to separate different people in different classes, and let's just go together as a whole team, and we'll make this thing work with a sense of beauty and love.
Ms. Throne.
To say I have a different perspective on this question is an understatement. We do have to welcome all people to Wyoming, and if we want to bring millennials into the state, being more welcoming to our lesbian, gay, transgender friends is a huge first step. And to be more welcoming, we have to pass a non-discrimination law statewide. No one, and I mean no one, should lose their job because of who they are. I have fought this fight in the legislature for 10 years. I have sat next to my lesbian desk mate who was attacked at a committee meeting. So, you know, it's not just one instance, Mr. Foster, excuse me.
Thank you.
It's not just one instance. Kathy Conley was attacked as a public servant in a committee meeting. We have a high school student in Riverton whose car was vandalized because she was lesbian. We cannot move forward as the equality state without a non-discrimination ordinance. If somebody has a picture of their wedding on their desk and they're a same-sex couple, they shouldn't be fired because of it. Thank you.
Mr. Wild, 60 seconds.
We're the equality state, and Foster, we're the first place in the world where women were able to vote. And everybody in this state should be treated equally.
Mr. Dolan, 60 seconds.
Well, I'm sure Mary knows this, but it already is a law. It is in our Wyoming Constitution. It's in Article 1, Section 2. If you haven't read it, read it. It says all human beings are to be treated equal. That's what the Constitution says. It's already written. It's already a law. We just need to follow it.
Mr. Galiotos?
Well, to answer the question directly, I don't believe that not having these special laws impacts our ability to diversify our job base or to grow our economy. My faith teaches me that we're to treat everybody with respect, we're to love everybody, and we're not to judge anybody. I've worked in corporate America my entire life, not only here in Wyoming, but at a lot of other places, and we have always treated everybody the same. I do not agree I would not condone other changes to our law. I think it was simply stated. Our laws work well now, and we need to abide by them, and we don't need to slice and dice anymore. It's all covered, and I agree with the laws that we have in place today. Thank you.
Ms. Hageman.
I agree. Our Constitution provides for equal rights, but not special rights. The non-discrimination law already exists. It's in our Constitution. I'm not aware of people being fired because they're gay. I think that we need to be awfully careful of setting up straw men and accusing an entire state, an entire society of people, and accusing us of discrimination simply because, well, I don't know why. And again, our Constitution is clear. I don't believe that we need special laws for anybody. The Constitution says that we're all equal, and we are. And I do not believe that we need to pass any additional laws in order to diversify our economy or to grow our economy.
Dr. Haynes?
Thank you. I hate to make this personal. Mark, would you take your glasses off so they can tell us apart? I was recruited to Cheyenne, Wyoming as a surgeon, and the community of Wyoming and the surrounding states showed up in my practice and made me a success. Some of you might not know, so I'm just going to tell you, I'm a black guy. Wyoming is clearly inclusive. I've been in leadership in every organization that I've worked in, from medical to agriculture. It's about what you bring to the table, not what you look like. We don't need special laws. We don't need special anything. We got Wyoming. Wyoming is a special place with special people, and we treat everybody as they need to be treated, but it's based on them, not based on the community. This community accepts you, and I mean the community of Wyoming. You be positive in your community, you bring something to the table, and they embrace you. Thank you.
Treasurer Gordon.
Well, Taylor, I think, is absolutely right. And I think about, we had a church and a minister that we were trying to select. We finally come up with a minister. He was from California, and he said, I can't move to Wyoming because of Matthew Shepard. And I think about Susie Cannon out there, Grace Cannon, my daughter, Ann, who were in the Laramie Project. And if you remember that, what a touching story about a community, a small community. And I think about Tom Friedman's talk here last night and his faith in the fact, or not last night, last winter, and his faith in the fact that it's small communities that make a difference. I think about that because I grew up in KC. And so one of the big problems in our country is that every time we have a problem, we think we have to have a law. And it's time that we just dealt with our local community government at the closest level that we can. Thank you.
30-second rebuttal. Mr. Freese.
You all maybe know Laramie passed this law 3 years ago, and there's not been a citation for any of this discrimination in 3 years. It speaks to the point of, this is Wyoming. We don't have those kind of problems. We love each other. I have a niece who will be married to a woman, and I will be at that wedding. We have a society where we're told to love one another. It's pure and simple. The Supreme Court just came out with a powerful decision that you can have religious freedom, and if you don't want to bake a cake or take a picture, you're allowed to do that. But at the same time, it guaranteed that every person of the sexual orientation is allowed to work without persecution. The Supreme Court just decided that. Let's leave it at that.
The next question will be directed to Ms. Throne. Kristen.
A study recently conducted for the legislature's Joint Revenue Committee found that under Wyoming's current tax structure, economic diversification will worsen the state's fiscal situation, not solve it. Do you support economic diversification? And if so, how would you address the problem called out in the study?
Are you sure these questions were entirely random?
Yes.
I was not at all surprised by the study that came out at the Joint Revenue Committee a couple weeks ago. In Wyoming, we tax three things extensively: coal, oil, and natural gas. They provide 70% of our revenue. We can diversify our economy until the cows come home, but if we don't broaden our tax base, the REMI study demonstrates that we will be behind. And what's really interesting about that study is comparison to other states, showing that other states with slightly different tax structures than ours, one of them compared in the study is North Dakota, which is also an energy state, Utah, an energy state, but a more diverse economy, that they make money on their economic diversification. And I sort of joke, we want to bring businesses into the state, but we kind of need to tell them to leave their families at home, because if we attract the young families that we want, it's going to cost money to educate them. And so we really have to bite the bullet. You know, it's tough to run for office and talk about taxes, but we really need to bite the bullet and have an honest discussion about how we build a tax structure that fits the economy of the future, not the economy we've had for the last 100 years. That is the only way, and I mean the only way, the Wyoming will get out of this boom and bust cycle and prosper into the future.
Mr. Wild, 60 seconds.
Last year, this state made $347 million in tourism. We can do better than that, a lot better. You see some of these commercials, and I'm going to use two as an example. One is Texas. It's a whole other country. And then you got this other one for North Carolina, for Asheville. They must feel real proud about that city. It's got the Biltmore there. I've been there, and I've been to Texas. It's got the Alamo on the coast. But those two states don't have anything on Wyoming. And we do not advertise whatsoever about our state. And we need to advertise more. And the second thing is, it's coming back to the elephant in the room, marijuana. We need the revenue, people. We need the revenue. It's going to come. Montana's going to be the next state to legalize it. They've already got medical. They're going to legalize it. We need to do it now. We need to do it quick. In the paratroopers, we had a saying, you snooze, you lose. I just lost.
Mr. Dolan, 60 seconds.
Well, I've got news for everybody. Wyoming has never been diversified. It's always been 70% dependent on the energy sector. And somehow we're going to tax in advance of being diversified. That study, by the way, just showed up the chemical manufacturing, 100-job comparison chemical manufacturing. That's the part it referred to as not helping out as far as diversifying the economy. We have never diversified our economy. We shouldn't be afraid of it. Once we do, we can talk about taxes after we diversify. But the biggest thing we need to do is diversify our economy. And the way we can do it, and this is just as an example, industrial hemp is something that's got 25,000 uses, can grow in Wyoming. It'll hit the transportation sector. It'll hit the logistics sector, hit the manufacturing sector, and it'll also hit the agriculture sector. The only one that has any example of specifics up here in that regard to diversify our state, then we can look at tax structure.
Thank you. Mr. Galiotos.
Thank you. I want everybody in here to know that I'm absolutely opposed to any income tax in this state. And if I'm elected as governor, I will fight tooth and nail to prevent an income tax in this state. Our problem, before you can ever talk about that, I don't even know why we're talking about taxes when we know that we have a spending problem in this state. The legislature itself last year passed an efficiency study that showed us that we have over $200 million of cost savings opportunities in state government. There's a second phase of that this year that will produce just as many savings. I don't know how I could ever come to you and say, I need more money from you, when we know that we're wasting money in our state, and that wasteful spending could go to cover our deficit. To me, that is absolutely not even moral. We need to address our state spending first. We need to put our state spending on the right level and right-size our government.
Ms. Hageman, 60 seconds.
Yes, thank you. You don't grow the economy by growing government. Broadened tax base is nothing but a euphemism for raising taxes, and I disagree. We need to cut spending. Our government is #1 in the nation in terms of the size of our government per capita, and we're number 50 in terms of transparency. We need to cut spending. One thing that was very important about the REMI study is it didn't just focus on economic diversification, It talked about the fact that there is economic diversification that does work, and that's for those industries that are upstream and downstream from our legacy industries. It talked about resource-based economic diversification and development that does pay off in the state of Wyoming. We need to have real regulatory reform in the state of Wyoming, and with regulatory reform, we can unleash our entrepreneurs, our businesses, and our industries. We also need to focus on constructing additional transportation in the state of Wyoming. We need to be looking at additional rail lines, and we need to be looking at expanding some of our highways in order to transport goods. The fact is that manufacturing for our trona industry, for our oil and gas industry and coal industry, those are all opportunities.
Dr. Haynes.
Let me be clear. I mistrust government studies. They generally go in the wrong direction to prove the point that politicians want proved. Clearly, the government cannot diversify the economy. That's the problem. The government has been messing with that for 20 plus years. Business Council, and now we got Endow. Worthless. Worthless. So, get government out of the way, cut taxes, and I have pledged no new taxes and no income tax. We don't need that. Reduce regulations so that they are only public, health, and safety. That's the government's function, nothing else. Get rid of these stupid building codes that are international, that stifle construction. So government gets out of the way, the entrepreneurs, the creative ideas, the business people will diversify the economy in any direction that the marketplace dictates. Thank you.
Treasurer Gordon.
So it's nice to know that the work that my office was meant to do has actually spurred this conversation. And it was kind of fun to look at North Dakota, Utah, and Kentucky, because we recommended that. Those are all Republican states. They have pretty small tax structures, and you can see that economic diversification efforts work differently in different places. It's a conversation we need to have. But I disagree with the findings, because those findings are based on very large enterprises that are not related to minerals that are plopped in a place. If you've been in Sheridan, you know that with little businesses that are committed to place and not driving up to Billings to buy stuff, but are buying stuff here, the load is not as great, and you have a vibrant community that people want to move to. If you want to diversify it, let's get that small business sector moving and shaking. Thank you.
Mr. Freese.
I'll respond to that. Okay, if we want to cut expenses, wouldn't it be nice if we knew what we're spending? We don't. We are one of 3 states that has not complied to openthebooks.com. North Carolina, California, Wyoming. There's 850 various business groups in our state, and about maybe 130 have complied so far. When those complied, they found that there is a group of teachers who teach science, technology, engineering, and math. They got together for a little conference, and they decided they needed a little entertainment. So they hired a magician for $35,000. There's a documentary that we spent $15,000 to talk about the Dutch hop dance. The capital was supposed to cost $93 million in restoration. It's now up to $300. We need to get that information available to us so we know what every single check that's written, and then we can figure out how to cut. And I just gave you 3 examples. There's $717 million of no-bid contracts. And the capital was done by an out-of-state contractor.
Ms. Throne, rebuttal.
Thank you. So the specific question was, can we really diversify the economy without changing the tax structure? You haven't heard anything here to really refute what I said. The answer is no. Businesses need to be able to plan. We need a competitive, fair, equitable tax structure that will provide the services that will attract the businesses to come to our state, whether they're large or they're small. If we landed Google's headquarters in Riverton, wouldn't that be great? Not really, because they wouldn't generate any revenue for the state.
Thank you. The next question will be directed to Mr. Wild. Craig?
Hold up a second, please. I'm hearing all these people wonderful, but I'm not hearing you guys good, so I'm going to come up there so you don't have to repeat the question. And I've been to a lot of concerts.
That's okay. I'll still speak into the microphone so the audience can hear. Mr. Weil, this question has to do with public lands. A 2016 conservation in the West poll indicated that 54% of Wyoming voters opposed states taking control of national public lands. The federal government owns approximately 30 million acres of land within the state of Wyoming. Should Wyoming initiate the management of federal lands? Why or why not?
Yes, we should. And the thing is, those lands need to be managed by the Native Americans that once roamed them and still roam them. They need to be managed by them. They shouldn't be part of the state, and they shouldn't be part of the federal government.
Mr. Dolan, 60 seconds.
I believe the question was federal lands transferred to the state.
Yes. Should Wyoming initiate the management of federal lands? Why or why not?
No, they shouldn't, for many reasons. The cost would be exorbitant, and the outcome by the Supreme Court would be dubious. Meanwhile, I've never camped out, Taylor, on state land. They don't let you. And I think it's important to know that that's not the biggest issue facing the state of Wyoming. It's the economics, the state economics. And you're not, coal's flat, so if you open up the federal land to coal, there's nobody going to build to it to get more of it if there's not a demand for it. So it's a falsehood to think that if you open that up to the state, we have more access to revenue. That's just not going to happen. That's not true. Railroads won't build unless they have to. I'm the only one with a rail background up here. I'm the only one with an energy background. I understand both businesses. My backbone is the same as Wyoming's backbone, so I understand it completely.
Mr. Galiotos.
Yes, I do not believe, first of all, that the state has a legal right to take the lands from the federal government back voluntarily. I don't know that it's a good idea either. As I've traveled the state, most of the people I speak with are actually very concerned if that were to ever happen. So I'm not a proponent of trying to take the federal lands back and giving them to the state. I am always a proponent of management as close to the local people as you can. So I think that if there is a possibility to work with the Trump administration to devise some way of us beginning to manage some of the lands in a strict multi-use process where agriculture, development, and outdoor recreation are all protected, I think that might be advantageous, but I'm not a proponent of trying to seize the lands.
Ms. Hageman?
Yes, I'm the only person who's issued a written public policy on this particular issue, and I would encourage you to read that and grab my other policy positions that I've taken. This entire discussion has turned into a battle of the extremes, and we need to bring it back to the middle. I have proposed a middle ground. I have proposed a pilot project type program where we would bring the stakeholders together, identify approximately 1 million acres in the state of Wyoming that are currently managed by the federal government, which would be about 1/30. The federal government owns 30 million acres. It's 48.2% of our surface estate. Wyoming would take management of those lands for 20 to 25 years and earn the revenues to be able to pay for the management, and we would be able to show that we would do a better job managing than the federal government does. Resource management from Washington, D.C. has failed. We know that because of the pine beetle outbreak and the catastrophic forest fires that we've seen. Drive all over Wyoming and you can see what has happened to our national forests. Management at a local level is more effective and more accountable. That's why our local BLM folks and U.S. Forest Service folks are doing an awfully good job, but the folks in D.C. do not, and we need to be more innovative when we talk about this issue.
Thank you. Dr. Haynes.
Clearly, everybody on this stage wants to be governor. You will have to swear an oath to uphold and defend the Constitution. I suggest you read it and learn it. Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17 of the U.S. Constitution says, federal government can own 10 square miles of Washington, D.C. They don't own that land in Wyoming, they're managers. We can not only afford to take that land over, we cannot afford to not take it over. In the first cut, when I assume control of that land, I'm going to add $1 billion a year to our coffers. Don't worry, Bill, you'll be able to camp because they will be state multiple use trust lands. And you and I are old enough to remember what true multiple use was. So, recreation will increase, we'll clean up the pine beetle mess, we'll have more grazing, more logging, more natural resource development. Not only can we afford to take over those lands, we have no choice. We must take over those lands. Thank you.
Treasurer Gordon.
Well, thanks. I think I'm the only land commissioner that's up here, so I'm acutely aware of what the cost would be of doing that, so I'm opposed to it. I do think there are some things that we can do. We could bring the royalties here so we could collect them and not be subject to sequester and not be charging 2% handling fee. But I would also say that we already have a process under the Tailored Grazing Act that's about disposal. So for those small pieces, we already have a mechanism to do that. I did want to just take a second and go back to the diversification. You know, we rebuilt the large project loan, not grant program, so that we could add value to our legacy industries. And we just did that about a week ago with Atlas Carbon. And there are some opportunities to diversify our economy without raising taxes. Thank you.
Mr. Freese.
I oppose, as my colleagues, the transfer. If you talk to people around the state, they recognize that the federal lands are a lot better managed than the state lands, and that you can't have a campfire, you can't camp overnight. But we have to also assure that we have public access to both federal and state lands for multiple use, for drilling, for recreation. Talking to some of my oil and gas acquaintances, they said, we know there's certain areas that are pristine for hunting, and we ought to keep it that way. If we look at Butch Otter, a friend of mine, the governor of Idaho, he's worked out a deal with the federal government where he can go in and manage the beetle kill. He negotiates with the loggers, they make their money, and then he and the feds split it up. So that is a way that we could do that without changing at all any of the ownership of the land, and I believe we should try to take that pursuit and keep the state lands and the federal lands as they are. And there's a lot of crony deals that people are annoyed about that take place where the state lands suddenly become available to private investors, locking out some of the other investors.
Ms. Throne.
Thank you. My position, unlike what I've heard from some folks here, has been consistent from the beginning. And for those of you keeping score, Mr. Dolan and I think, just agreed on something. I have consistently opposed transfer of the federal lands back to the state. One of us up here will swear an oath to uphold the Constitution, but we also swear an oath to uphold the Wyoming Constitution. And in the Wyoming Constitution, we clearly disclaimed the interest in the federal lands. But it's important to be realistic about this. The next governor is going to have to advocate for pulling back some of the duplication in the federal requirements. I have the expertise to do that. I'm an energy attorney. And the next governor is also going to have to advocate for what makes sense for Wyoming every day with the federal government and making sure that our stakeholder interests are protected, whether that's agriculture, energy, or recreation. And I have the record to do that.
Mr. Wild, 30-second rebuttal.
I have no rebuttal.
The next question will be directed to Mr. Dolan. Kristen?
Rural schools have been closing in waves for decades, but the debate has taken on sharp urgency this year, particularly in communities in the Midwest and New England that have grown smaller and older since the recession. Sheridan County is home to Slack School, which has fewer than a dozen students each year. Must Wyoming realize, in light of pressures on education funding, that some schools, administrative functions, and districts must be consolidated?
The question is consolidate districts, school districts. I'm in agreement with that. I've been all over the state. I've been to every incorporated town in Wyoming and then some. I have visited with schools. I have visited with administration, and they need to have more authority within the schools themselves. But as an example, in west side of the state, you'll have 2 school districts, and Fremont County has 8, and then you come to Sheridan, you've got 3 districts. Well, there's things we can do, I'm sure, to improve that efficiency, and still have a high standard for our education of our most valuable resource, and that would be our children. We need to make sure that we keep that as a number one priority in any regard, in any decision making that we have, because that's the most important part. It also boils down to our economy. And without a vibrant economy and an economy that's dependent on the mineral sector, then we're going to have these challenges. And until we start to look at our fiscal spending, which, by the way, I'm the only candidate that's probably going to spend the least amount of money, and I think it's hypocritical for everybody to try to buy the job in the first place up here. Secondly, fiscal responsibility within the state needs to be looked at, and I do believe that there's money to be available through the efficiency program. And look at the government.
Thank you.
Got 2 jet airplanes.
Mr. Galiotos.
Yes, I think that we have a very wonderful education system in the state, but I am also a believer that the most important part of the education system is between a teacher and a student. And everything else around that is secondary to that very sacred point, and that is where learning takes place. I also believe that what we need to do is, like in any part of our government, we need to look at how we continue to deliver quality education. We meet the objectives that we have before us. We make sure we're preparing our kids for the future and for new jobs, but there is room in the education system to do things differently and to try to get efficiencies in it also. To say that there's not is not realistic. We have opportunities, and I look forward to working with the education system to try to find out. My whole life has been spent running large organizations and creating efficiencies. And I believe that we can do that in our education system, and we can still deliver a great education product.
Ms. Hageman?
We need to work closely with the local school districts. That's where so many of these decisions are made. I believe that if there are needs to consolidate school districts, that's something that we're going to have to discuss. As we've addressed many, many times up here this evening, Wyoming has an issue with our revenues. We have a spending issue, and we're going to have to cut spending in this state. We need to prioritize our spending. We need to focus on what is important in terms of our education. And I've been visiting, as I've traveled the state over the last 6 months, I have met with superintendents and principals, I've met with the administrators, and I've met with teachers. We really do need to focus our spending and our priorities on the classroom and where we are delivering the actual service, which is between the teacher and the students and the parents and the families. That's where we need to focus our spending. That's where we need to be focusing on what we're going to do with the future for our students. So I believe that we need to prioritize that spending, and if we need to consolidate some of our schools, that's going to be a discussion that needs to be had at the local level and with the state as well.
Dr. Haynes.
As I understand the question, it's consolidating school districts because of funding issues. So when I introduced the idea of restructuring how we deal with education, I didn't complete that idea for you. The next piece of that, which will control spending, properly pay our teachers, and properly fund our schools, is a voucher system, K through 12. And when we do that, we decrease much of the administrative burden that's introduced actually by federal overreach. The other thing that will cause is competition in education. Homeschoolers are supported, private schools are supported, church schools are supported, and the public school system will be supported. Studying the Wisconsin system, when they did this, the public school systems improved exponentially as well. Competition for the education dollar will control spending, pay our teachers properly, and raise the level of education. Thank you.
Treasurer Gordon.
Well, thank you. I was on the Johnson County School District. It's one school district, and we had Buffalo and we had KC, large versus small schools. We still had the same problems. But I do think that we do have to go around district by district because every district's a little bit different. The guy who came to work for me when I first got my ranch back at Ucross had $50 in his pocket, is now on the school board of Claremont. And believe me, that's, I think, the most expensive district that we have in the state, but the students are doing exceptionally well. It is a conversation that we have with the efficiency study. There is a lot of money to be had, but again, if we're going to source our materials from out of state, that's going to be problematic for our state. This is a continuing conversation, and the governor's got to lead that conversation, and I'm committed to do it with experience. Thank you.
Mr. Freese.
The school districts are so different around the state. Where you have a rural area like Fremont, there's 6 districts, and then for more tight urban areas, you have fewer. That decision should be made by the respective school districts. I'm a little reluctant to have this top-down approach to anything. And so if there's 2 school districts 8 miles apart and they decide they want to share administration or share a nutritionist, that should be the 2 school district boards getting together to decide that. And there are efficiencies that can be done, but if we get openthebooks.com, we will know those numbers. Right now, only 10% of the school districts have made those numbers available. So champion openthebooks.com so we can see where the money is spent. And if there's an administrator making $230,000, we should know that, and the next school board can say, hey, our guy makes $200, let's get them together and pay one guy $180.
Ms. Throne.
I want to be in the room when they have that discussion.
I have a bulletproof vest.
You can always count on Foster for an innovative look. I think there's somewhat of a false premise in that question, and that is that there are hundreds of millions of dollars of savings if we consolidated school districts. There is money to be saved, and if Sheridan 1, 2, and 3 wanted to consolidate, I'd say go for it. But the rural schools are the lifeblood of our community, and I have to say that Mark stole the district I was going to mention, Claremont-Arvada. It's kind of down the road from our ranch, back way 50 miles. And we really just have to focus on how we're going to fund education and get off these issues that might save us a little bit of money but don't solve the long-term problem.
Mr. Wild.
First and foremost, I'm not trying to buy this election. This morning when I left Cheyenne, I was at the coffee table with my dog and totaling up everything, $1,167 is what I put into this. $1,167, plus whatever it's going to cost me to get back to Cheyenne, up here and back, okay? You said a vibrant economy. We don't have a vibrant economy. Well, I've told you how we can have a vibrant economy, people. I've told you how we can have a vibrant economy. You know, you laugh about it. I'm sorry, people. You want the status quo? What's happened in the last 7.5 years? Cindy Hill got fired. My gas taxes got raised. The Endow gig that's going to take 3 or 4 more administrations before it's clicking on all 4 cylinders. I'm offering a solution, people. You ought to think about it.
Mr. Dolan, 30-second rebuttal.
It does come down to the economy and funding. That is the basis. I'm a businessman. I understand the economy, and the economy needs help. Not for the governor to run it. The best and most important resource we have are the people in Wyoming. That's where they need to be empowered to have the door open to different ideas and then run with it. In industrial hemp, we're going to start to sound like Cheech and Chong here. So,
thank you.
So,
the next
anyway,
question,
it's about the economy.
The next question will be directed to Mr. Galiotos. The next question will be directed to Mr. Galiotos. Craig.
I didn't think Cheech and Chong would be mentioned tonight, so excuse me. Mr. Galiotos, Governor Mead has repeatedly said the executive has cut more than the legislature during his tenure. Specifically, can you identify programs tonight that you still believe need to be cut or cut more? The voters want to know what is on your chopping block.
I'm sorry, I could not hear that question.
Okay, I can repeat it.
Try going closer to the mic.
Sure. Governor Mead has repeatedly said, Governor Mead has repeatedly said that the executive has cut more than the legislature. So the question is tonight, the voters want to know what you want to cut. What is on your chopping block? What's important to you, as you all have said the state needs to tighten its belts? Can you get specific?
Yeah, well, I don't know that I would call it a chopping block, but I would start first and foremost with the money we've spent on these huge efficiency studies. I believe that the legislature and the people sitting out here today and in the digital audience should hold the next governor accountable to walk into office, pick up these studies, 2 of them now, that we have spent hundreds of thousands of dollars to generate and take some action on them. The first one looked at 4 agencies of the state. The second one's looking at other parts of the state. I would begin by picking up those efficiency studies and making sure we get value out of them. That's the first step. And I believe once we get into those 2 studies, that we're going to find other opportunities to lower our expenses, deliver better services to our residents, and to lower our overall spending in the state. That is where we need to begin. It's teed up, it's ready to go, and I would tell everybody here I've done that. 2 things: you won't get everything that they say that they've identified as savings, and number 2, you won't want to implement everything that they identify. But we need to take advantage of these studies and the investment that we have them. No more studies, hundreds of thousands of dollars sitting on the shelf. We need to take action, and we need to take action now.
Ms. Hageman.
Wyoming is famous for studying and studying and then studying some more and paying even more for studies, and I agree with that. We need to implement the recommendations from the efficiency studies. We need to address the no-bid contracts. We need to address the fact that over $770 million is spent in the state of Wyoming every biennium on no-bid contracts. We need to go back to regular order to make sure that we're being more efficient and that we're practicing good government. Transparency, effectiveness, accountability, responsiveness, those are all obligations of our government, but I think that we've moved away from those things. We need to make sure that we are freeing the private sector, so while we're not, and when I talk about cutting regulations, that is not cutting specifically spending, but if we cut regulations at the state and federal level, we will free the private enterprise system to absolutely thrive in this state. Cutting regulations is absolutely critical to the future of Wyoming and to our economic well-being.
Dr. Haynes.
Thank you for that question. As I understood the question, you asked, what will I cut first? Endow. Now, Endow was created by the legislature, so I can't get rid of it. I can zero their budget and disband the board, and I will definitely do that. Wonderful people on that board, wonderfully successful people put in the wrong system. Endow is dead meat. Thank you.
Treasurer Gordon.
Well, thank you. As treasurer, I have stood up to defend the office to make sure that we cut back on capital construction. We're still working on that. I had to go to the Supreme Court because 3 years ago we knew that we weren't going to be able to finish the capital project that you spoke about on budget, and it was time to rein that in. That's one of the things we need to cut. I think we also need to start from the Constitution and build our budget out. But one of the things that I've worked on over the last several years is trying to find because we talk about cuts as sort of a light switch. We can't do that. We need to have a glide path, and when we change the portfolio construction, we could make the difference so that we could land this in a safe way that's good for the state going forward. And by the way, we're #1 in the country for transparency for our portfolio, according to the Peterson Institute. Thank you.
Mr. Freese.
I already mentioned a few things to cut, and they're kind of symbolic. $35,000 magicians, $15,000 Dutch hop dances, but there's a whole bunch of $717 million in no-bid contracts. And in the process of trimming, we want to make sure we pay attention to the people equation. People's lives are important, and it's easier to forestall maybe a roundabout that we need someplace, a road construction. A lot of that, however, is on federal money. But let's take the things that we can defer that don't affect the lives of people's jobs. What good does it do to bring in a company with 10 employees if we lay off 10 employees as state workers? What does that gain us? So the whole notion, again, is getting back to openthebooks.com. That's my buzzword, like hemp and marijuana is over there. And if we can basically get that achieved, then we have the opportunity to get done what we need to get done.
Ms. Throne.
Thank you. Buzzwords are great, but we have a state budget that I've spent time on. I'm the only one up here who has spent time on the state budget and understands that for the last several years we've always started with the wrong question, which is what do we need government to do and how are we going to pay for it? There are some things I'd like to see cut. We have old environmental programs from the 70s that were designed for a different time. But we have to be careful talking about cutting things like road construction and employees. We need to solve this problem. And you know, it's easy for Foster to say that he wants to cut road construction because I think he flew here in his plane. The rest of us drove. So the roads are very important to Wyoming.
Mr. Wild.
Efficiency studies. Yeah, that's something, isn't it? We pay these people out of state to do these studies. Aren't we good enough to have our own people do those? And then, you know, a couple of you are talking about cutting everything. I think Governor Meade has cut quite a bit in the last 7.5 years. And everybody, it comes back to the same thing, the marijuana and the hemp. If you want revenue, that's how we're going to do it. That's how we're going to do it, people.
Mr.
And I love
Dolan.
the 70s.
Oh.
Thanks,
Mr. Dolan.
Anyway, I'll give you specifics. The specifics as an example, just as an example, the governor and the state of Wyoming have 2 jet airplanes. Those 2 jet airplanes cost roughly about $3 million to operate a year, plus the asset liquidation. I'll drive, I'll take chartered service or subsidized flights from Endow. But the thing about it is the other place to cut is Endow, and it's also Wyoming Business Council. Wyoming Business Council was developed 20 years ago for one specific reason. It's a government entity, by the way, government entity to diversify the economy, and it didn't get done. And so what do? We doubled down on top of that with Endow, with another government entity. Millions and hundreds of millions and almost $1 billion out the window for that purpose. I do understand that they provide grants. I do understand that there are some economic help and aid with that, but that's not the purpose they were set up for.
Thank you. Mr. Galiotos, 30-second rebuttal.
Well, I would just like to say that when we talk about having people in the state that know how to do things, I would like to suggest that's me. I've spent my entire life in the private sector. I've run and had the blessing to lead small startup companies all the way to large global enterprises operating in over 100 countries with thousands of employees. Our state is very complex and the organization is complex. But what I've learned is that if you don't make a profit, you go out of business. And right now...
Thank you.
Oh, that was fast.
It is. 30 seconds goes by fast. Our final question is directed to Ms. Hageman. Kristen.
Do you support the efforts of Wyoming Promise? Will you or have you signed the group's petition advocating for a 28th Amendment to the United States Constitution to overturn the 2010 U.S. Supreme Court decision, Citizens United v. FEC?
No, I do not. I believe that we have a First Amendment right to petition our government for redress, and I believe that that's exactly what that decision from the United States Supreme Court was. I do not believe that you treat corporations or unions differently, which is the situation we were in prior to that decision being made. I believe that people have the right and the ability to participate in government, and I believe that that decision was correctly decided.
Dr. Haynes.
I do not support Wyoming Promise. I do not support the constitutional amendment that goes with it. The First Amendment and the 14th Amendment says equal protection under the law, basically. Corporations are simply people working together, and they have the same right as an individual. Thank you.
Treasurer Gordon.
So I tend to agree with my colleagues. I don't support that. I think there are ways that we can address it through the court system. But just to take a little bit of time, I wanted to make clear that what Foster's talking about with the Open the Books and what I'm talking about with the Peterson Institute reflects the budget of the state,
Yes, and
which,
not him.
and not the investments.
He has a halo.
Well, you may have my time.
I wanted to make that point, and I'm sorry I didn't make that point.
No, that's fine. Thank you.
Mr. Freese.
I was blessed to be one of the 19 members that formed the Executive Roundtable of the Republican Governors Association. And why that happened is because Haley Barbour, who was in charge at the time, realized that the corporations that they were always going to, they both gave the Democrats and they gave the Republicans. So if you're a corporation, you need to have access. So Bristol-Myers gives to the Republicans, give to Democrats. So what he did was this executive roundtable is to develop individual citizens, and they got up to 625 of us that gave money which were more dedicated to our cause. So I think it's sort of a non-issue that people think somehow the Koch brothers are going to buy the election. When you look at Steyrs and Soros, they've got corporations too. So that's kind of an offset, and I believe that it's not a big threat, and I just believe all of us ought to contribute to the process, not only with our money, but with our time, and I would agree that we don't have to worry about Citizens United.
Ms. Throne.
Do I support Wyoming Promise? Absolutely. Did I sign the petition? Yes. As have my husband and hopefully my sons. Corporations are not people. That was an odd decision that overturned years of precedent, and I certainly hope that effort is successful. But in the meantime, we're all running to be governor. We need to advocate campaign finance reform in our own state, which I did as a legislator, to provide this transparency that everybody's been talking about. Who's paying for what? Who's supporting whom? The voters have a right to know that, and we can do transparency while we wait for Citizens United to go away.
Mr. Wild.
My answer is emphatically not, and I'm not going to elaborate on it. Everybody else here has.
Mr. Dolan.
I'm not going to try to buy this job, the campaign. Everybody here is spending a lot more money than I'm going to spend. I could spend the money, but I find it hypocritical to spend that kind of money and talk fiscal responsibility at the same time. Promise Keepers has a point because money does influence elections. It does have influence. And just like with OpenTheBooks.com, I bet you're invested in that, aren't you, Foster?
It's an organization, it's a charity. It's a charity.
So the point being is that if we take that money, and I haven't asked anybody, I have gotten money from friends and family, different places. I haven't asked for any money. I just find that as a business person, hypocritical to be out trying to get your money so I can buy your vote, or the other way around, I think. But anyway, the money buys votes, and I think that's something important we need to look at.
Thank you. Mr. Galiotos.
Yeah, I'm not a supporter of the Wyoming Process Initiative either, for all the reasons have been stated. I believe everybody needs to have a voice. I believe that the Supreme Court, that's the way why they made the decision that they did. I believe that, really the process works today, and it needs to stay the way it is, and I'm hopeful that initiative does not go forward.
All right.
Rebuttal.
And rebuttal. Yes, I knew I missed one. Rebuttal, Ms. Hageman. 30 seconds.
Thank you. I don't like politicians attempting to micromanage our lives or take away our First Amendment rights, and that's what campaign finance reform was all about. The decision was correctly decided, and I don't approve of the initiative that you've described.
We'll now invite each candidate to provide 2-minute closing statements, and we'll begin with Dr. Haynes.
Thank you. As you know, I'm Dr. Taylor Haynes. I'm running for governor because I am purely constitutional. When the country was on the Constitution, we very rapidly became the most powerful economy and military on the planet, while remaining the most generous people on the planet, and we still are. I am purely Republican. What that means is I will adhere to the Republican Party platform. If you look at my platform online, it is purely Republican. And that is why I'm a Republican, because those principles, those timeless truths in the Republican Party platform are how I was raised, how I was educated, and how I was trained professionally. I do have a broad experience in our free enterprise system. I have experience all the way from power generation and distribution, of course, to healthcare, to ranching. I'm an entrepreneur both in healthcare. I've patented surgical staplers. I graduated from University of Utah College of Medicine with honors. So I've been blessed with education, and I've been blessed with the specific training for a natural resource-based economy and a wonderful people that I want to serve. So I ask you for your vote, starting early voting on July 6th. You can vote all the way to August 21. Vote early, but Republicans don't vote often. Thank you.
Treasurer Gordon.
Well, Christy, Craig, and Dixie, it's wonderful. Thank you very much for organizing this. Thanks to Sheridan Press, Wyoming PBS, and Sheridan College. You know, I feel blessed to live in Wyoming and blessed to live in this part of Wyoming. I'm blessed to be married to Jenny and have 4 wonderful kids. I've worked in energy, tourism, and ranching. I still ranch. Well, Jenny actually does the ranching now. But those are the 3 most important industries in the state. But I'm also involved in the community with VOA and UCross Foundation. I'm a Wyoming conservative, pro-family, pro-Second Amendment, pro-smaller, less intrusive government closest to the people. And in my time as your treasurer, I had one job, and that was to work for you. Our portfolio has grown by over $5 billion, and we have worked constantly to do better. I delivered on Amendment A, and when a bill passed that didn't respect the Constitution, I took action. I stood for you to protect the Treasurer's authority to bring fiscal conservatism to the Capitol renovation project. You know, in the fall, I want to start to work to build the capability for the state to help communities cut through the red tape that is holding back hundreds of millions of dollars that's available to build infrastructure that we leave on the table every year. I want to reorganize our natural resource agencies to make them more efficient and effective, leaner and meaner, with more resources for counties. And I want to better align economic development efforts. We have good people and good intentions, but we've had mixed results. I am Mark Gordon, and I am proud to have been your treasurer. And I am inviting you to come join me in building a brighter future for Wyoming. And I humbly ask for your vote on August 21st for governor. Thank you.
Mr. Freeze.
I grew up in very humble surroundings. As you know, we came out of the Army with $800 of accumulated leave pay. My wife cut my hair, scrubbed the floors, and we have a sensitivity to what that meant. My mom never wanted to buy store-bought food, so we'd take 12, 15 chickens in the basement and we put them in the freezer. So my love for the everyday guy is pretty important. And I've decided, because I've worked very hard when I was younger, I can now donate my $500,000 4-year salary to little charities that are around Wyoming. So that's important to you because it means I can't be bought. I don't take any special interest money, only from individuals. And therefore, I only make 3 promises to you. I promise to care about you, I promise to listen to you, and I promise to work hard for you. And on the listening score, I am committing now to make sure, if I'm blessed to be your governor, honored to be your governor, I will show up to every county and do a town hall once a year. Sometimes the governor's get elected, they go on off to wherever, and you never see him again. I'll be back. Now, the other issues that we've talked about already, you know, the open the books and all those things are important in order to be able to get our ideas under control. But in life, there's 3 stages: the learning stage, the building stage, and the serving stage. We've been set free to serve, Scripture says. And so I'm in a position now with my wife, Lynn, of 55 years and 4 children, so we don't have to raise children anymore. We don't have any businesses to direct. We don't have any calves to brand. So we can work 100% to pursue your interest and do what we think is right for the normal everyday taxpayer. I was recently pictured with my white shirt with 12 welders standing behind me, and they were grimy for all the welding they do. Those are my guys. And those are the people I want to represent because I remember those younger days. God bless. Thank you.
Ms. Throne.
Thank you. Thank you to the Sheridan Press, to Public Radio, and thank you, Dixie, for trying to herd a group of cats. I think this group, maybe we should all try out for late night TV. Growing up on the ranch, my father, my brother Tom's and my father, used to always say, "You have to neighbor." He used it as a verb, not a noun. In fact, the worst thing he'd ever say about anybody was, "They don't neighbor." So what does that mean? You help with branding, you help fix fence, you bring food, somebody dies, you bring food, somebody's sick, you bring food. When in doubt, you just bring food. But my last few years in the legislature in Cheyenne, I saw a lot of lack of neighboring. And that was one of the reasons I jumped into this race, because we need to get back to the Wyoming where we come together to solve our problems. And we used to do that in Wyoming, but now it's all about litmus test politics, and I think you heard some of that here tonight. Will you check all the boxes? Are you with the party? Well, I'm not running to be the Democratic governor of Wyoming. I'm running to be the governor of Wyoming, to put Wyoming's interests first. I'm running too because I know we can be more than a boom and bust state if we are willing to take control of our destiny and change how we do things. I had somebody in Lander say to me, a senior citizen, a Republican, "If one more candidate tells me they're conservative and that we need to tighten our belts without telling me what they're going to do, I'm going to scream." That's what you've heard tonight. You have heard platitudes. You need someone who's going to bring solutions and who has a proven track record of solutions for Wyoming. And I'd appreciate your vote on August 21st.
Mr. Wild.
I may just be a cabinet maker out of Old Cheyenne, but I tell you what, I've been to 24 countries in my life. I'm a father, I'm a grandfather, and I love this state. The reason I'm running for governor is because of water. We're the headwaters of the Missouri, the Columbia, the Colorado River systems. And people allocate our water without giving us any disdain or any respect whatsoever. The reason the marijuana is in the picture is for the revenue people and for education and for water projects. Tonight, you've heard us all up here, heard us speak, talk. It's your decision to think of who you want to vote for. I've never voted for the party. I've always voted for the person. But you people need to make up your mind, and it's very important that you do vote. God bless you, and again, God bless our veterans. And remember, don't hide it, light it, and keep Wyoming wild. Keep Wyoming wild.
Mr. Dolan.
We've talked a lot about various things, and contrary to what Mary said, I did list some specifics. Maybe the only one that did list specifics on what to start with, not what to end with, but what to start with. And one thing that we need to consider is that the energy sector isn't the most important part of our state. It's you. The people of this state are the most important resource and asset that we have. And that's what we're in this for. I'm running for governor because I think it's an obligation. We should all serve our community, our state, or our country in whatever fashion we feel suited for. I don't need to do this. I want to do this. And I'll work hard for all of you for the same reason. Not one of us can do this alone, by the way. We need your support, and without your support, we don't go anywhere. We have the opportunity to really diversify our economy for real and not just talk about it. I'm a businessman. I'll work hard to do that for you. And together, there's nothing we can't accomplish. We can do anything we set our minds to. We just open the door and take down the tripping wires, and we can take off and do something great for this state. I would like to mimic everybody down the line here and say that July 6th is important. You can write in, and then all the way through to August 21st, you can vote. And I would appreciate your consideration, but I want you to look hard at specifics, at these candidates, and then you sort through things and see what you come up with. But it's very important to do that, and I would appreciate your consideration come election time. Thank you very much.
Mr. Galiotos.
Thank you. I want to leave you with a little bit, knowing me a little bit better than has already been covered. I'm a pro-life, pro-family, pro-Second Amendment, limited government, Wyoming native. I have my wife Stacy here with us this evening. I have an 8-year-old, 11-year-old little girls. I believe in this state, and we need to do something right now to put this state on the right track for our children. Currently, I run and have started a number of different businesses in the Laramie County and Carbon County areas. I manage those. In addition to that, I serve as the chairman of the board of Greenhouse Data Corporation, one of Wyoming's premier technology companies. I am already working to diversify our state. Through all of my personal efforts and through the work of our technology company, we are creating jobs today for Wyoming, and they're good jobs. I spent my lifetime as a businessman, a conservative businessman, and I believe, my main emphasis right now is threefold. We need to control our state spending. We need to move government out of the way and empower our private sector to create new jobs for our kids. And we need to make sure that we map those jobs back to our education system to ensure our kids are prepared to take jobs in the new economy. Everything is changing. The next 5 to 10 years, the jobs will be different. Those are my three priorities: control state spending, empower the private sector to create jobs, and to make sure our kids can have jobs right here in this state and stay here. I ask for your support and your vote in the August primary, and I appreciate all of your time this evening. Thank you.
Ms. Hageman.
Thank you, and thank you for being here. I announced in January of this year that I would be seeking the office of Governor of Wyoming, and since that time I have driven over 25,000 miles. I visited every county several times, and I've had the opportunity to meet with folks from all walks of life. I have visited with accountants, economists, teachers, engineers. I have met with addictionologists. I've met with mental health professionals and folks in the criminal justice industry. To say that this has been an experience of a lifetime is an understatement, and regardless of what may happen at the ballot box, I will be forever thankful for the beauty that I have seen, the warmth of our Wyoming citizens, and the kindness of our communities. I made the decision to run for governor in part because I believe that we need to be much more proactive and aggressive in protecting, promoting, advocating for, and fighting for what I refer to as our legacy industries, our minerals, our agriculture, and our tourism, including the game and fish, the fishing and hunting. We in Wyoming have relied on these industries for many years, and they have provided the economic engine since we became a state. They are critically important to all of us, and we need to work diligently in terms of protecting them. There are two additional primary issues that form the basis for why I am running for governor. One of them is that we need to get Wyoming's fiscal house in order. We must address spending. And there is no worse platitude than saying that we need to raise taxes so that we can continue to grow government. We need to cut spending in this state, and that is the solution to the situation we find ourselves in. We also need to have real federal and state regulatory reform. It is the one issue that has been addressed to me with every single industry group and every single person that I've spoken with in the state of Wyoming. Government is too big, government is too intrusive, government is too invasive, and federal and state regulatory agencies are out of control. I look forward to visiting with you, and I would appreciate your vote on or before August 21st.
Now, would you all please join me in thanking all of our candidates for taking the time to come to Sheridan. Just one moment. If you would wait just one moment, I'll turn it back over to Kristen
Just a couple
to wrap
of more
things up.
quick
Candidates.
thank yous. First of all, thank you to Craig Blumenshine from Wyoming PBS and Dixie Johnson of the Sheridan County Chamber of Commerce for helping.
Wait, excuse me. Candidates, could you wait just one moment? Let Kristen wrap up, please, and then we'll start the conversation. Thank you very much. Kristen?
So again, thank you to Mark and Dixie for helping us navigate the evening, and thank you to all of our readers who sent questions in for us to consider for tonight's debate. Thank you guys for coming to tonight's event, sponsored by the Sheridan Press and hosted by Sheridan College in the Whitney Center for the Arts. Please remember that Wyoming PBS will archive the live streaming of this event on their website at wyomingpbs.org, and the candidates have been invited to join us in the lobby following this to visit with the audience. Please have a good evening, and as they've mostly all reminded you, the primary election is August 21st, and absentee and early voting starts July 6th, so please get out and vote. Thank you so much.